So who remembers back in 2009 when the artificial surf reef was opened in Boscombe? Anybody remember that? It cost £3.2 million and millions more was spent on a redevelopment that was meant to make Boscombe the south coast answer to Cornwall. I remember going down there to take a look. Went down for the launch day. It was pretty impressive. There were surf shops everywhere. There was famous surfers signing autographs. There were camper vans blurting out Beach Boy music. There were multiple games of beach volleyball underway. There were surfboards and wetsuits to hire. There was loads of cool designer fashion accessories to buy. Everything a surfer could dream of, except just one thing missing. And if you're a surfer, it's the one thing that matters most. It's the one thing that counts more than anything else. Yes, you've guessed it. There were just no waves. The sea was as flat as a pancake that day. Now, I wonder if life ever feels a little like that for you. So full of so many things in so many ways, yet empty of that one thing that really matters, that one thing that really counts. I wonder if you sometimes feel like you're a surfer. You've got the beach, you've got the wetsuit, you've got the surfboard, but you have no idea where the waves are. It's like we know that life should have some kind of point, some kind of purpose, some kind of ultimate meaning, but what is it? Where is it? How on earth do we find it? Now, I want you to imagine that you had all the time, all the energy, all the money, all the resources possible that you would need to go on a search and look for that missing something. So no expense spared, nothing off limits. Everything you needed was at your disposal. Oh, there was a man, a king, he was called Solomon, and he didn't have to imagine. He really did have it all in terms of money, in terms of power, and in terms of influence. And as he pondered the meaning to life, he decided to throw everything he had, time, energy, money, influence, into finding that missing something. And over the next few minutes, we are going to join him on his search. We're going to track with him on his enlightening journey to a wonderful destination. But as I say that, I do need to warn you this morning, I need to warn you of something first. His search gets a little bit dark at times. He's going to lead us into a long tunnel, but if we stick with him, he will eventually lead us through to the light. So King Solomon, his search is documented for us in one of the books of the Bible called Ecclesiastes. That's a really weird name, isn't it? But it simply means assembly or congregation. And the reason it's given that name is because the life lessons of Solomon's search were written down and they were presented to an assembly of people by a teacher. And those same lessons have been preserved for us in the Bible so that we, this congregation today, this 21st century congregation, can learn the lessons from Solomon's search too. So these words are now 3,000 years old, but they are still as relevant as ever. They're still ringing true for millions of people all over the world. They are still changing lives as they lead people into the light of a meaningful life. So the times certainly have changed, but people haven't. People are still searching for that something, still in need of the help that we can find here in this book. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start at verse 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king of Jerusalem. The teacher here is probably Solomon himself. He addresses an assembly of people to share with them some life lessons from his search for meaning. And here's the teacher's first observation about life. So in verse 2, meaningless. He said, life is meaningless. Here's the teacher's one-word summary of life as he found it. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. That word really comes from the idea of a vapor, steam from a kettle. It's here 1 minute, then it's gone the next. It doesn't stay around long enough for anybody to get hold of it. It doesn't have enough substance to take hold of it in any kind of meaningful way. So Solomon, for much of his book, and this is what you really need to understand before we go any further. Solomon, for much of this book, is pondering what life would be like if there was no God. That's why we keep getting this phrase, meaningless. What would life be like if we were just the products of chance, random processes? And this is what he says right at the beginning. Meaningless. That repetition of those words that appear some 30 times in this book are there to ensure that we don't miss the point. And here's the point. It doesn't matter what life brings you, whether you're rich or poor, famous or unknown, intelligent or simple, successful or a failure, whether you die young or die old. If there is no God, then there can be no ultimate meaning in life, no purpose, no point, and no hope. It's as the American philosopher Clarence Darrow said. He described life like this: as a ship heading to no port, with no harbor, no rudder, no compass, no pilot, simply floating for a time, then lost in the waves. Here's the headline lesson from Solomon's search. If there is no God, if God doesn't feature on our horizon, on life's horizon, then we really are all at sea, drifting and then drowning in a tide of meaninglessness. Here's the second thing he says, verses 3 and 4. Life is monotonous. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and go, but the earth remains the same. So one of the other recurring phrases in the book of Ecclesiastes is this little phrase, under the sun. And that's the teacher's way of describing life on earth. So if there's no God above the sun, if there's no greater power, then life under the sun is devoid of meaning, totally monotonous. Nothing ever really changes in a meaningful, lasting way. It just keeps going round and round in endless circles. There's nothing to be gained from life, says the teacher. No destination to arrive at. However hard you try, work or toil, as Solomon says, life is just like a giant hamster wheel. The harder you run, the faster you just get nowhere. The teacher observes just that. What was true of one generation, he says, is true of the next. They're born, they live, they die. They're born, they live, they die. They're born, they live, they die. They're born on a spinning earth that circles the sun, forever going round, forever going nowhere. Chuck Swindoll said, the rising of the sun, yuck. Another day of monotonous routine. Verse 8, the teacher says, all things are wearisome. More than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing. The ear, its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. So life is meaningless. Life is monotonous. Here's the third thing he says to his class. Life is miserable. As we hit verse 12, we start to see some of the places in which Solomon started to search for meaning. Verse 13, we can see where he started. I applied myself to study. He began to pursue meaning firstly through learning. I'll lock myself in the library. Surely I can find the meaning to life there, in the collected wisdom of the world's greatest intellects and philosophers. But hear what he concludes in verse 18. With much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. So he tells his listeners, there's nothing on earth that I haven't looked into. I've studied it all. I've researched everything, and guess what? I found no answers. And what's worse, the more I searched, the more miserable and meaningless life became. Now, I know what you're thinking. You probably think, come on, lighten up, Solomon. You think too much. You need to get out there. Go and live a little. The world's a lot bigger than your library. You don't know what you're missing. Go out and see, and everything that life can offer. Meaning comes through touch rather than through thought. And what happens next as we turn to chapter 2? It's like Solomon hears your rebuke. And that's exactly what he does. He gets out of his books. He leaves his library and pursues the meaning of life in the very best of what life could offer. So he ponders this. Maybe the meaning to life can be found in, and there's 10 places that we find in chapter 10 that he looks for the meaning to life. And the first is pleasure. Maybe I'll find meaning in pleasure. Let's give pleasure a go. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. That's what he does. He pursues pleasure. A pleasure seeker is someone who does as they please. They live for whatever takes their fancy, whether that be football or fishing or science fiction or holidays, luxuries, comforts, 5-star restaurants, early retirement. Maybe meaning is found in pleasure. But look what Solomon concludes. That also proved to be meaningless. Maybe then, verse 2 of chapter 2, maybe the meaning of life can be found in laughter. You know people like this, don't you? They just treat life as one big joke, take nothing seriously, just having a bit of a laugh, a bit of a giggle. They're like Tony Hancock. He's one of the funniest guys that ever existed. At the height of his fame in 1961, he had audiences of 15 million people listening to him in stitches. But just 7 years later, tragically, he committed suicide. And of course, that was no laughing matter. Laughter, I said, is madness. Well, maybe the meaning to life is found somewhere else. Maybe it's found in booze. I tried cheering myself with wine, he says in verse 3. So life's a pint, it's a party, it's living for Friday night, it's a liquid lunch, it's a lock-in. Maybe the meaning to life is found in a bottle. Legendary footballer, alcoholic George Best said this: I was in for 10 hours and had 40 pints, beating my previous record by 20 minutes. He was, of course, on that occasion talking about pints of blood needed after his liver transplants. Well, maybe there's meaning then in projects. I undertook great projects, says Solomon. I built great houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made great gardens and parks and planted all kinds of trees in them. Life's a project. It's a grand design. It's moving from one project to the next. A new bathroom, a new kitchen, a new conservatory, landscape gardens, borders, patios, water features. What's next is the question that the project person asks. And that very question highlights to us that the project person never, ever really arrives. What next? What next? What next? Well, maybe there's meaning, thinks Solomon, in shopping. Look at verse 7. This is a really shocking verse. I bought male and female slaves. So hear what Solomon's saying. Solomon could buy anything the world of his day could offer, including slaves. If it was for sale, he bought it. Maybe I can buy myself some meaning with retail therapy. So the actress Cameron Diaz really exposes the flaws here. She said, I'm just like any other woman. I have a closet full of clothes, but nothing to wear. It's that full but empty paradox of life. I can buy anything I want except the things that really matter most. Well, maybe, says Solomon, there's meaning. Maybe I'll find the meaning to life in wealth. I amass silver and gold for myself and the treasures of kings and provinces. Gold, silver, diamonds, pearls. Surely riches will bring meaning to my life. George Bernard Shaw was really insightful here. He said, you can easily find people who are 10 times as rich at 60 as they were at 20, but not one of them will tell you they are 10 times as happy. Well, says Solomon, maybe the meaning to life is found in sex, in relationship. I acquired male and female singers, a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. Solomon had a personal harem at his disposal, women on demand. Maybe, he thinks, meaning can be found in multiple sexual relationships. maybe the next relationship will be better than the one before. But sex didn't end his search. It still left him feeling empty. And the search goes on in verse 9. Maybe then I'll find the meaning to life in greatness. He said, I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. Wouldn't it be great to be great? To be famous, to have fans, millions of followers, thousands of subscribers? Surely to have greatness is to have meaning. Well, that's not what the rich and the famous, those who are considered great in this world, actually say. It's a recurring theme. So Jim Carrey, for example, he echoes what Solomon found here in verse 9. He said, I wish everybody could reach the top as I have done, only so that they could see there is nothing here. Well, maybe then, maybe the meaning to life can be found in excess. Verse 10, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Orgies, gluttony, glitzy gadgets, binging, bigger house, a bigger car, bigger bling. Maybe I need to live life to the excess in order to find what I'm looking for. Flamboyant rock star Freddie Mercury died of AIDS 1991 at the age of 45. But his life lyric lives on. Does anyone know, he sang, what we're living for? It's a poignant epitaph to his life. Then finally in the search, Solomon considers whether life is actually found in work. I hated all the things I toiled for under the sun. What do people get for all their toil, all their days? Their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. Some work to live, others live to work, long hours, late nights, never without their mobiles. When they finally give themselves a holiday, the first thing they pack is their laptop. Rob Parsons says that no father will ever say on his deathbed, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. Listen to Solomon's conclusion. I denied myself nothing that my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor. This was my reward for my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, what I had toiled to achieve, everything I tried was meaningless. A chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Can you see just how exhaustive his search was? And can you feel how exhausting it all was? I tried them all, says Solomon. Everything that life offers, I've devoted my life to search for meaning. And all this time, all I've been doing is chasing after the wind, trying to catch bubbles. Believe me, says the teacher to his students, the wind can't be caught. You can't take hold of it. You can't have it. It's endlessly elusive. Solomon seemed to have it all, yet it left him empty and hollow inside. So long before Bono sang it, Solomon was left singing, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Lady Gaga said something similar. I've won Oscars, I've sung at the Super Bowl, but in some ways I still feel empty inside. Solomon had drawn himself alongside those in this world who search for something, try everything, and find nothing. I wonder if that sounds familiar to anyone here this morning. I wonder if that's why you're here this morning. You've tasted life, but you've been left asking, is that it? Surely there's something more. If you to continue on your search through the book of Ecclesiastes, what you'd see is the toll that this search took on Solomon's life. This emptiness caused him to walk down a long, dark, and despairing tunnel. I don't want to depress you this morning, but I just want us to take a peek into that tunnel before we see the light, okay? We're just going to have a little glimpse inside. And so chapters 3 to chapters 11, Solomon concludes in those chapters, in summary, life, because it's meaning monotonous and miserable, life's actually not worth living. That's where he goes. Solomon, in those chapters 3 to 11, wrestles with some of the big issues of life. So time and eternity, good and evil, oppression and injustice, loneliness, wisdom follow. But here's the biggest issue that he grapples with. If there is no God, if there is no hope of heaven, then our common destiny is the dirt. When we're dead, we're dead. It's just as the atheist philosopher Bertrand Russell said, when I die, I rot. Or as the old Italian proverb put it, at the end of the game, both the king and the pawns are put in the same box. I just want to show you something of Solomon's logic here. I just want to read a few verses from chapter 4, verse 2. Hear what he says as he goes to this very dark place in his search. And I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who had never been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. I wonder, do you hear what Solomon's saying there? If our common destiny is the grave and nothing more, then life is not worth living at all. Better, in fact, to be dead, or better still, never to have been born. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It shouldn't be a surprise that the biggest killer of men under 40 is suicide. It shouldn't surprise us that the lobbying for euthanasia is so strong. Their logic is strong if there is no God. Their logic is strong if when I'm dead, I'm dead. To die is better than to live. Having nothing is better than having something that can hurt so much. If there's nothing more to living than dying, then I might as well die sooner than later. I told you it was dark, didn't I? These themes that we find in chapters 3 to 11 are often reflected in music, in modern music. Actually, in every decade of my life, I've heard this lyric. Let me just share with you one of them. It was written by Tears for Fears. It was a Christmas number one a few years back. Gary Jules, Christmas number one. And I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had. I find it hard to take when people run in circles. It's a very, very mad world. That life lyric comes right out of the book of Ecclesiastes. When you take God out of life's equation, you take meaning out of life's equation. What can life give you that the inevitability of death won't steal from you? Those long hours at the office, those letters after your name, those certificates on your wall, those trophies on the sideboard, those gadgets in your pocket, those parties you were invited to, the positions you held, those family members you loved, ultimately, utterly meaningless if there is no God. The message of Ecclesiastes is not meant to depress us, but to give us a dose of reality and then lead us to the light. It's a wake-up call to life without God. Without a creator God, your past is accidental, your present is meaningless, and your future is hopeless. But here comes the light. You've been waiting for it. It's been a long, long walk through that tunnel. Here comes the light. There is a God. There is a God. As C.S. Lewis famously wrote, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. There is a God who made you on purpose and for a purpose, a God who loves you and longs for you to find that fulfilled life that you are looking for. And that's exactly where the book of Ecclesiastes concludes. The final chapter is chapter 12. The light of the end of the tunnel finally comes. Here it is. Here's what Solomon concluded with his students. Life is found in God. Meaning is found in God. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Here's the remedy to a wasted life. Don't spend all your days, your time, your money and energy searching in all the wrong places. Ecclesiastes 12:1 shows us where to start our search, with the news that there is a God. If there is a God, that changes everything. With that news that there is a God, we can be assured that we are not accidental, we are not meaningless, we are not hopeless. We are, in fact, precious people created in the image of a gloriously good and purposeful God. A God who loves us, a God who has a fulfilling plan and purpose for our lives. And the evidence for such the existence of such a God and such a plan is most clearly seen in the life of a person called Jesus Christ, someone who walked under the same sun as ours. And the Bible says of him, he is the image of the invisible God. If you want to see and know God, look at Jesus, says the Bible. If you want evidence of God's existence, his character, his purposes, and his plans, then you can see them all. You can find them all in Jesus. Let me read you something else that the Bible says of Jesus, that by him and through him all things were made. Are you hearing this? Jesus is the creator mentioned there in Ecclesiastes 12:1. And why did the creator God, Jesus, come to earth? Well, Jesus told us why he came to earth, why God stepped out of heaven onto our earth, under the sun. He said, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. The creator God came to earth to demonstrate not only his existence, but also his love. To demonstrate to us that he cares. And through his life, his death, and his resurrection, he, the creator God, Jesus, will give back to us the purpose and the meaning we've lost through our own waywardness and our unwillingness to love God and live for his glory. And it all ends towards the end of chapter 12 in this way. The teacher sums up. He has this final conclusion. He says this, here is the conclusion of the matter. Here's what I really learned from my search. Fear God and keep his commandments. God will bring every deed into judgment. So fear God there doesn't mean be scared of him. It means live life in reverence towards him. Live your life in the light of who God is, what God is like and what God has done. Live your life in the light of his free offer of forgiveness. I think the conclusion would go something like this if we were putting it into like a punchy 3 points to take away. Remember God, fear God, obey God. That's it. That's where we find meaning in life. That doesn't necessarily mean, as Carolyn was saying before, it doesn't mean life will be easy. Christians for sure don't live a trouble-free life. But when in trouble, they can be assured, even in the dark, even in the darkest of tunnels, they can be assured of God's presence. They can be assured of God's purposes. They can be assured of God's plan. They can be assured of God's power that can make a real tangible difference in our lives. Here's the conclusion of Solomon. Don't waste your life found in God. But how do you get this life? Well, you're just a prayer away from that life. Tell God in prayer that you're lost and you want to be found. You're empty and you want to be filled. You're in the dark and you're longing for the light. Ask him to forgive you of your sin, for living life your own way and without giving him the praise, the fear, the reverence that he deserves. Tell him you're ready to turn and ask him to take your life in a totally new direction. So Solomon ends his search by showing us where the surf is. Solomon concludes by saying, the sun is shining, the surf's up, there is a God. All you now need to do is to jump in. There's just a couple of things I wanted to say to you before we go through for some teas and coffee. So do remember these Something More books. There's some down here, some out in the foyer. If you're not a reader, there's some smaller booklets called Something Missing, and you can find those out in the foyer as well. One of the things we've been saying to folks is if you've got a question, and many people do have questions, like is there a God? Is there something more? If you've got a question that's not being covered over the next few weeks, why don't you send it to us? Call it Just Ask. Just email us at hello, Moordown Baptist Church, or just come and ask us in person. That's fine. That would be great. And there's just one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention. So starting on Sunday, the 19th of April, we're going to be running a 4-episode course called the 3-2-1 course. It's free. You can use by joining the QR code that you can see on the screen. It's also here in this leaflet, or you can email us. That's fine. The course has been designed for those who are searching for something, for those who are perhaps new to the Christian faith as well. You'd find it really, really helpful. And it's an opportunity for you to ask some more of your questions. We're just going to watch a 1-minute trailer for that, and then I'll close in prayer.
At the center of the human story stands a man. He doesn't just claim to be one more person from this world. He keeps saying he is our maker, and he has come in person. Who is this man? 321 helps you take a fresh look at life by taking a fresh look at Jesus. Through video teaching, animation, and lively group discussions, the Christian and the curious sit down together. We don't assume any prior Christian knowledge or experience. We're all exploring the deepest questions about life, meaning, and existence. Why not bring along a friend? Because we all need to take a fresh look at history's central figure. Together, let's center on Jesus and his vision for life. Because when we see Jesus afresh, it changes everything.
Time goes really quickly, doesn't it? My sermon is an illustration of that. But time rushes by. Can I really encourage you to take the time to follow up what you've heard this morning in one way or another, with a book, with a leaflet, with a question, or by booking on this course. Let me pray. Lord, we want to lift to you everything said and done this morning. Thank you for news that there is a creator, that there is a God, that we've been made on purpose and for a purpose, and therefore we can find meaning, fulfillment, and hope. Thank you that Jesus came into the world to seek and save the lost, and that he was willing to do that at the expense of his own life. Thank you for that wonderful demonstration of your existence, your love, and your purposes that we see in the life of Jesus. Help us all then to fear you, to obey you, and to trust you all the days of our life. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all.